for the 33rd Congressional District, and we are going to continue our questions from the audience. Here is our next question. How would you, as a member of Congress, regulate the pharmaceutical industry, particularly those drugs that cause harm? And Henry, you're first.
That's an area that I've been working on very actively. We passed legislation that gave the FDA the authority to monitor the drugs, whether they're produced here or anywhere else. They often go on inspections to see that the plants are doing all the safety things that they need to do. There was an outbreak recently of meningitis from a compounding pharmaceutical that was done by a pharmacy. That's regulated by the state. And I asked our committee to do an investigation, be sure that we understand how this happened. 12 people have died. Many more have been hurt by this drug. So our staff, the Republicans responded that they do want to do this investigation, and our staffs are meeting with the Centers for Disease Control and the Food and Drug Administration. This is a matter that we need to take seriously, because compounding is usually done by a pharmacist for an individual to meet the needs of that individual. But for the pharmaceutical industry, on safety questions, they must answer to the FDA. For a while, there was no requirement that the drug companies even report adverse results from using drugs. And I wrote into the law that they had to report it to the FDA so that the public would know if there's a problem with the drugs. Sometimes the manufacturer would just as soon not have you know that you may be harmed by their drugs. But drug safety is essential. And if it looks like I only have 30 seconds, and I wanted to say something about the issue of the 2003 negotiation for drug prices. Mr. Bloomfield said, go check it out. During the break, I checked it out. PolitiFact said that it was the 2003 Bush bill on Medicare prescription drugs that prohibited negotiation with the pharmaceutical companies to get lower prices, not the Affordable Care Act. In fact, in the House version, we had a provision allowing the Secretary to negotiate it, and then that didn't stay in the bill. Thank you.
Okay, Bill?
You're right, Congressman Waxman, but the Affordable Care Act, as you said, the House provision didn't pass. There's a group of 60 Democrats trying to change that, and you're not one of them. As far as the FDA, as far as drugs, I am concerned about the funding to the FDA. I absolutely don't oppose cutting it, and they need to have enough money to make sure our prescription drugs are safe. So far through the first hour, Congressman Waxman has referred to me as a Republican, didn't understand how I could be an independent, so let me explain. I was always and have always been a social moderate. But prior to open primaries, we had a choice, a Republican or a Democrat. So as a Republican and someone who's a concerned citizen, I worked within the system and within the party to try to expand the party, to try to expand the tent. Unfortunately, I wasn't successful. Now, around 2010, I got involved with No Labels and became very concerned about the hyperpartisanship in Congress. Also, by then, we passed open primaries, so in March of 2011, I re-registered as an independent. Yes, it's true, I gave two checks to Governor Romney in the primary early in 2011 because I thought he was the best of the 8 running in the Republican primary. Perhaps Congressman Waxman thought I should have supported Michelle Bachmann, thank you. But I didn't. Now, after a couple of months, when by late spring, when I realized how far right Governor Romney had tacked, I withheld my support and was supporting Governor Huntsman until he dropped out. I've not supported anyone since. But in 2010, I supported Chris Kelly, who I thought was the best candidate for Attorney General in the Democratic primary, simultaneously supporting Steve Cooley, who I thought was the best candidate in the Republican primary. Congressman, I have supported over 17 Democrats in the last few years. I'm wondering how many non-Democrats you've supported.
Thank you. Okay, our next question. What will you do to bring back and protect aerospace and defense jobs in this district. And Bill, you're first this time.
That should be a concern of everyone in this district and everyone in this room. The LA Air Force Base, by the skin of our teeth, was saved a few years ago from the Base Closure Commission. If that base were to be closed, the LA Air Force Base with its thousands of jobs would leave, and the Aerospace Corporation would leave as well. I have met with the CEO of Aerospace, and I've met with the CEO of Northrop recently. Fortunately, the good news is it appears that the LA Air Force Base will not be on the Base Closure Commission in the coming 2 years because, good for us, that when you close a base, it actually increases short-term the cost. But it's very important that we secure and keep the LA Air Force Base here. Now, I was frankly shocked to hear that Congressman Waxman said when he found out that he was in this new district that included El Segundo, that he needs to bone up on the LA Air Force Base. The deal is, this base almost closed several times in the last few years while he was a congressman. And if it had closed, it would have devastated his constituents in Beverly Hills, in Santa Monica, throughout the entire region. Because not only would those two companies have left, but other companies would have followed with their jobs. The most important thing we can do is make sure that base stays here.
Thank you. Henry?
I've done my best to represent my constituents, but the Air Force Base and the aerospace industry was not part of my constituency. More importantly, you had one of the best members of Congress, Jane Harman, representing you. And when this base was going to be put on the closure list, she used all her seniority and influence to get it taken off. Now, I have met with people from Northrop Grumman, from Boeing, from the aerospace industry. I'm still meeting others from that industry. If I'm going to represent this district, I want to know about what's needed there, because this is an important jobs place for so many of the people that live in this district. So I'm going to be a representative for the aerospace industry's concerns, and I will fight to make sure that Air Force Base stays open. I'm pleased to hear that you think it's not going to be on the Air Force Base, the Air Force Base will not be on the closure list. I hope not. But I think I'm in a better position to stop that from happening than you would be, given my seniority, given the fact that I'm going to be chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee if the Democrats take control of the House. I want to say about these campaign contributions, I would not want to say anything in error. I understood you've given $2 million to Republican candidates and causes over the years. I have a list here of all the contributions you've made to Boehner and Romney and the National Republican Senate Committee and to PACs, Republican PACs, after you said you were no longer a Republican. I'd like to give you this list and have you tell me if it's wrong, because this is what we got from the financial disclosures that are required by law. You gave $10,000 to Boehner. You gave to Huntsman, yes, sure. But you also gave to the National Republican Congressional Committee. You gave to Mitt Romney. You've given to these people so the Republicans can control the Congress. And yet, they're the ones who are fighting against
Thank you,
our
Henry.
interests in California.
Bill?
That's the next question.
Oh, thank you, oh my God. I was sitting here thinking, did I blow it?
No, I blew
Lord,
it.
thank you, whoever said next
Okay.
question.
Next question. Would you oppose amendments to the Constitution on balancing the budget? Why or why not? So I guess, Henry, since you were last time, you're first this time.
Yeah, well, I have voted against the constitutional amendment to balance the budget. I don't think that ought to be in our fundamental doctrine. I don't think it ought to be in such an important restriction in our Constitution. There are times when we need to be out of balance. Right now, we couldn't balance the budget if we had to do it tomorrow. We've got to do it in a systematic way that is balanced and in a way that's not going to hurt our economy. I don't think that if we could look at what's going on in Europe, that that's a model for us, but it is pretty much what the Republicans are calling for. Very stringent restrictions that are going to cost people jobs. And when people are out of work, we're going to lose revenues, the deficit is going to widen. So and there are times when you cannot balance the budget. I don't think we ought to have our hands tied by that constitutional amendment, so I would oppose it. But I do want to say that there's an old saying, if you walk like a duck, if you talk like a duck, if you quack like a duck, you're a duck. And if you give to the Republican campaign committee, and you give to Mitt Romney, and you do that after you left the Republican Party, I think one might ask, why wouldn't we assume you're a Republican?
Thank you. Bill?
I would
And there's nothing wrong with that.
I would only support a balanced budget amendment if it also included provisions to allow deficit spending in a recessionary times. And I think that would be pretty tough to write. But if they wrote one that allowed the freedom to have deficit spending in recessionary times, then I would be in favor of it. It's interesting, Congressman Waxman, that you mentioned about the power that you have, that's a reason that it would be better for you to represent us in terms of the Base Closure Commission. We have a room full of a whole lot of veterans that are wondering about what's going on at the VA facility in Brentwood. And sir, your power hasn't done them a lot of good. It hasn't done the severely disabled veterans on the streets of Santa Monica much good at all. As far as the charge you made, I re-registered in March of 2011 as an independent. I had already committed to 2 events. One I mentioned, to see Senator McCain, and yes, unfortunately here in California, unlike New Hampshire and Iowa, you have to pay money to see people, and I took my mother to see Senator and Cindy McCain. As far as Speaker Boehner, I specifically went to meet with him the same month in March of 2011 because I had an idea concerning President Obama's Deficit Reduction Commission recommendations and to encourage the Speaker on a way to engage President Obama. He liked my idea. Unfortunately, as we all know, it did not come to fruition.
Thank you. Next question. What is your position on drilling off of our coast and why? So Bill, I guess you go first this time.
I'm absolutely against it. It's not needed. What I will do with the new president, whichever the president is in January, whether it's President Obama or Governor Romney, is I'm going to encourage the president to declare a goal for this country in 10 years or less to get us off of all foreign oil. If we weren't purchasing 8.5 million barrels of foreign oil a day, the governments of Iran, Venezuela, and Russia would be in deep trouble. This is a win-win-win waiting to happen. It's a national security issue. We, after all, won the Cold War because we bankrupted the Soviet Union. Our country, if properly led, will get behind an economic challenge to wean us off of foreign oil if explained the benefits. It's a security issue. It is an environmental issue because one of the main reasons we need to do it is increase conservation. After all, if we were all driving Chevy Volts, we wouldn't be buying any foreign oil today. And it's also would be good for business and for job creation because we're not getting any jobs shipping oil into this country from abroad. One of the things that the government should do is encourage the alternative production or the manufacture of cars that run on alternative energy sources. The fact is, here in California right now, we're suffering from $5 a gallon gasoline. Now, it wouldn't be so bad if we ran our vehicles on natural gas, if we had that alternative, that choice, because natural gas would cost $3 or less. Now, the oil industry is not a free market. OPEC controls the prices on one end, on the other end, the oil industry is an oligopoly. There's room for the government to help free them, to help give us alternative choices.
Thank you. Henry?
I'm against drilling offshore, but everybody here should know that the Republicans voted for an energy plan that would allow that to happen. You should also know something else. The Ryan budget, the Republican budget, what the Republicans all voted for, would have cut the Energy Department's budget on renewables in half. It would have stopped our efforts to look for alternative fuels. It would have set us absolutely in the wrong direction. Now, I want to say something about the veterans statement that you made a minute ago. I know politics can be rough, and I know that in a campaign people can say things, but you know my position on the Veterans Administration because I sent you a letter about it, and it spelled out all the things I've done to save the VA and to make sure that the services are there for people who need them, whether it's for mental illness or physical problems, and all the efforts that we've been doing to try to get homes for the homeless veterans. I don't appreciate nor think it's appropriate for you to say that I am in any way responsible for the homeless veterans of this country. You should know better, and if you read this letter, you would definitely know better. This letter's on my website. It was sent to Mr. Bloomfield. I think you even gave me a response that you thought it was good, the things I did, but you think I should have sent a letter after the second letter, but before the fifth letter, or something like that. That we'll put on the website as well. People should know my position on the VA and not take that unfair crack as an appropriate statement of my position.
Thank you. Now we're going to combine these two for our last group of questions before we go to our closing statement. This same person wants to know, what is your position on Proposition 30 and Proposition 38, and why? So, Henry,
Which one's 38?
38 is the Molly Munger.
Oh, yes, okay. Thank you. The governor has said to us, unless he has a balanced approach with some increases in revenues, he's going to have to make very deep cuts. Now, where are these cuts going to be made? It's going to be made in education. It's going to be made in programs that people rely on for their lives. For many people, they have to rely on government services. They don't have a lot of money put away just to pay for whatever they need, and government is there to help. It also means that we're not going to have their natural resources protected in this state. So there's got to be a tax increase. Molly Munger, I don't know her. She and her brother have been very active, along with Mr. Bloomfield, in trying to write laws by putting things on the ballot. And Mr. Bloomfield indicated on Proposition 32 it wasn't quite drafted the way he would have liked. Well, that's not the way to pass laws. Laws are often complicated and you have unintended consequences. So Ms. Munger decided that the proposal that the governor put on the ballot to raise revenues was not good enough. She wanted to raise more money from the super wealthy. Well, look, what she did is put out a proposal that's going to, we fear, bring both of them down. I don't know if that's her intentions. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. She doesn't want that to happen. But she put in all her money to put that thing on the ballot to compete with the governor's proposal. People ought to do things in the regular order, not decide if they've got enough money, they can write the laws. And then we have to vote yes or no without being able to amend them, change them, or make sense out of them. And we have too many ballot proposals that really don't give us the full explanation of what the consequences are going to be when we get our sample ballot. I'm against 38. I'm for the governor's tax proposal, Proposition 30.
Thank you. Bill?
Definitely against 38. I'm not endorsing on 30 one way or the other, but I will share with you my thoughts. I went through public schools, including college in this state. All three of my children went to public schools in this state. It kills me, the choice that we are given in Proposition 30. It absolutely kills me. I have no problem paying more taxes. The problem I have is this going to get the job done? Is the money going to go where it needs to go? Or are we going to feed a system controlled by the government unions, leading to us having to close our prisons or reduce the size of prisons and not build any more prisons because we can't afford the exorbitant fees the prison guards are charging because they made a sweetheart deal with Governor Brown after giving him $2.5 million. The power of the government unions in extorting money out of the state knows no end. So I will probably vote no. I don't know, but it is a hard decision, and I'm not offering advice to anyone. I do not support the Ryan budget, and Congressman, my example about the VA was in reference to the defense and aerospace industries, where you said who could get the job done better than you. And I was pointing out to you, sir, with all due respect, even with 38 years in Congress, you're not that powerful, because otherwise I am sure you would have taken care of our veterans, our homeless veterans.
Thank you. Now we are going to 1-minute closing statements. And since Bill started off the evening, Henry, it's yours first.
Well, I want to ask your support in this election. There are things that I've done, and I probably have passed more laws than anybody else in the Congress. And they're laws that are very important to people. They've made their lives better, and they've saved money. They have really helped Americans, and that's what I want to do in Congress. But there are issues we need to work on. We need to balance the budget, or at least reduce that deficit. We've got to address immigration matters. We've got to have tax reform. And I think we've got to do something about climate change. And I don't see us getting there with the Republicans in power. And I can't see how Mr. Bloomfield can say that he's not responsible for what the Republicans do when he funds them for their elections. He took credit for what he's done on tobacco and for women's health because he's given money to a women's health project in South America, and he's paid for a billboard that says these are the number of people that have died from cigarette smoking. If you take credit for the money you've done to get that message out to people, you have to take the credit for the money that your Republicans, your money that has kept the Republicans in power.
Thank you, Bill.
I guess I'll take credit for supporting Jane Harman, Mayor Villaragosi, and 15 other Democrats over the last few years too. Look, I've spent virtually my entire life living in this district. I love it here. But the truth is, I owe it to my children and your children to go back to Washington to see what I can do to get it working again. I left partisan politics 19 months ago and became an independent. And I'm one of the co-founders of No Labels, a group that is already working to reform Congress. I've worked to ensure that your vote counts by helping to pass redistricting reform, and I've worked to empower independents by giving them a voice in primary elections. If you want a Congress that works on solving our nation's problems, putting your interests ahead of those of partisan politicians and the special interests that fund them, I would appreciate your support and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Ladies and gentlemen, the candidates have information for you on the tables outside, and remember to vote on November 6th. Thank you.